Hello fellow readers, book lovers, and whoever else is watching this. I'm Emily at Midnight. Welcome to my channel. Recently, as I've mentioned, I've been getting into horror. So far, I've really just dabbled. Like, I've not read any of the big guys like Stephen King or anything, but I've been enjoying the dabbling that I've been doing. And the dabbling that I've been doing has been coming almost exclusively from Books and Lala's recommendations. I've found that I have similar tastes to her on a lot of fronts. Maybe not all of them. I don't know. I haven't really explored all of her different genre tastes, but her horror recommendations haven't failed me yet. She's got this huge video of like basically every horror book she likes or something. It's a really big video and she just goes through books fast, like super fast, boom, 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 boom. So I was watching this video, this was like a couple of months ago, and as she would go through, if something sounded interesting to me, I would pull it up on my Libby and place a hold. Well, this week, 2 of those holds came in. The first one was This Thing Between Us by Gus Marino, and I really loved that book. That's not what this video is about at all, but if you want a review of that one, let me know. The other one was We Used to Live Here by Daniel Hurst, and it was really disappointing. Now, as I've said, Books and Lala's recommendations really haven't let me down yet in the horror genre, so I was really surprised by this. I was like, wow, this one just really fell flat. I'm surprised she liked it as much as she did. But here's the kicker, and if you read the title or the thumbnail of this video, you probably know what it is, but I found the wrong We Used to Live Here book. Apparently I was distracted. While I was looking things up on Libby, I was watching her video at the same time. So, you know, that's how it goes. But what it comes down to is she did not recommend We Used to Live Here by Daniel Hurst. She recommended We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. I only discovered that I'd read the wrong book because when I pulled up Goodreads to review it, I clicked on the right book and saw that cover and was like, wait, that's the book I was supposed to read, and this is a different author. So I realized that I had sat down and read the wrong book for nothing. But because I read the wrong book, and it was bad in kind of a funny way, I'm gonna take you along and explain this book to you. So come along. Alright, so to be clear, we are discussing We Used to Live Here by Daniel Hurst, okay? So the book opens on this couple who've just closed on this house. They toured it and their estate agent, which I guess is British for real estate agent, helped them pick it out and sign the paperwork and everything. And there's like this awkward moment in the kitchen between the real estate agent and the husband of the family where it sounded like he was flirting, but he absolutely wasn't. Basically what it comes down to is he's like, oh, I'm not good in the kitchen. My expertise lies in other rooms of the house. She takes that as an innuendo. He did not mean it as an innuendo, and everyone is embarrassed for the moment. Now, moving on from that, as we read this book, we're following around in the heads of the husband and wife, whose names I should look up so this isn't confusing. Okay, their names are Steph and Grant. As you read this book, you're in Steph's head or Grant's head. They kind of switch off for the most part, chapter to chapter. And we're in Steph's head. They're headed off to go meet up with one of her friends, but right as they get to the door, there's this old couple there who were about to knock. This couple explains to Steph and Grant that they used to live in that house. They were the first people to live in that house after it was built, actually. And they were wondering if they could come take a look around. And it's kind of weird and everyone's a little bit uncomfortable at the prospect, but they're like, sure, why not? Come on in. They give him a tour. Grant's really grumpy the whole time, but Steph is trying to play good host and walk him around the house. They're talking about how it used to be and all the changes that it's gone through. And over the course of this exchange, we discover that they lived there in the 60s and they had a son, but he died. And it's a really awkward subject. They clearly don't want to elaborate, as I feel like most people do when they lose a child. Now, this exchange ends fairly quickly. They go on their way and it just kind of sticks with Steph a little bit. She's just thinking about the history of the house and the various people who've lived there, and they go on their way to lunch with Steph's friend. And at lunch with Steph's friend, we're now in Grant's head and he gets a text from Rose, the estate agent. Initially it's like super normal, like how was your welcome bottle of champagne and stuff, but she just kind of keeps texting him despite his like kind of curt like, yep, thanks for the champagne, it was good responses, and it becomes pretty clear that she's flirting with him. She's taken his previous accidental flirting as interest and is starting to pursue him over text. And we're in his head and he's basically just like, I shouldn't keep texting her, so why am I? Which is kind of weird. I don't know. As we go through the book in his head, he's like self-aware, but like not about very much, you know? He does a lot of like introspection of like, oh, should I be doing this? but it just doesn't get very deep. And so I can't complain that we don't get introspection, but we just don't get much in the way of introspection. Like, it's just not very deep. I don't know. I mean, I might just be biased because, spoiler, through this book, he has an affair with the estate agent named Rose. And it's just, like, quite unpleasant to read. Like, she asks him to meet up and he's like, well, I shouldn't, but I guess I'm just gonna. And then, like, he starts treating his wife super poorly, like being super snappish with her, and she has realized that they're starting to have some distance between them, and so she's like trying to go out of her way to bridge this gap. But at the same time, something else is happening. And that thing is renovations on the house. They're trying to update it, get it up to code, and like tear down a wall upstairs so that they can have a playroom for their 2 kids. And in tearing down that wall, they discover the wall that they're tearing down is a secondary wall that's been put up over this other wall. And the other wall is horrifically creepy. It's just covered in like scratches and like scrawling complaints across it, like, I'm scared of mom and dad, I'm afraid mom and dad are gonna kill me, they hate me, I'm so scared, I'm starving, I'm gonna die. And somewhere near the bottom is the name William, which is the name that the couple said their son's name was, the old couple that came and toured their house. Upon this discovery, Steph is like, oh my gosh. Oh my God. That is so creepy. Why is this here? What is the story? Did that couple kill their son? Because it sure sounds like it. She's talking through all of this to her husband, Grant, and he's like, nah. Like, that's literally his reaction. He's just like, nah, couldn't be. Couldn't be. And she's like, his name is William. It's right there. It's so stupid. It's so unbelievable that he's just not interested in pursuing this, because Steph is rightfully super creeped out by this. She like starts looking up like a kid named William who went missing in their area, and she can't find it under any of the names of the other people who've lived in the house, except for this old couple who, yes, their son's name was William, and yes, he went missing in the 60s when they lived in that house. And everyone searched for him. The couple just said he wandered off and they couldn't find him, and they were holding searches for days. And, you know, the police interviewed this couple, and, you know, their story held up through the years, and so there was no reason to have suspicion on them. He just disappeared, and no one knows where he went, and it's this town mystery. Steph is finding all of this stuff out, and each time she brings it to Grant, she's like, so, they did have a son, his name was William, he went missing. He's just like, why are you talking about this? I don't want to hear about this. Stop, again with the William kid, leave me alone. Like, it was just so weird to read. Like, basically the main justification we got from the book was just that, like, he wanted to be texting his mistress, or he was like busy feeling racked with guilt over hooking up with his mistress Rose. And so he was like snapping at his wife, and like he felt bad about it, but like was just irrationally angry every time she brought this up. And it was it was just so unbelievable to me, because if I found a wall in my house that said mom and dad want to kill me, I'm scared, and was signed at the bottom of the wall William, and there were scratches all over it, and then this kid had gone missing, I would think he died in the house, you know? Like, I don't know how you could not jump to that conclusion. I don't know how you would be like surprised that someone you live with in this house keeps thinking about the fact that someone was very clearly killed in the house. You know, like, it just, 2 and 2 just didn't add up for me in this book. Okay, so Steph has been looking into this, right? She's been reading newspapers, she's been looking this up online. Every time she brings it up, Grant will just yell at her. Like, I can't believe you're still on about this. And so she's like, well, I guess at this point, I just can't bring it up to him. Like, this really sucks. I want to be able to talk to him about it. I don't know why he's being so rude to me. But we keep fighting, and like, they don't make up. He doesn't apologize. Like, there's no resolution to this, which is just wild to me. Like, I can't imagine that kind of relationship, and it sucks. So it's just kind of unpleasant for that reason too. And like, around this point, I think he's ended things with Rose. He's like, oh man, I feel so guilty. I'm so lucky to have Steph and my kids in my life. I can't screw this up. And so he like texts her and he's like, we're over. Don't respond to me ever again. And he's like, now I'm gonna make up for it with my wife. But he doesn't. He proceeds to continuously be super rude to Steph. There's no making up for his absentee behavior. There's just being rude. I can't explain to you how unsympathetic his mental dialogue is. Like, it's really crazy to be in someone's head and have no desire to root for them. That's kind of not great writing in my opinion, but he's just like, man, I think I got away with it for another week. Anyway, I'm gonna go be mean to her again. It's, yeah, really bizarre. But Steph is still plugging away at, working on the house and also trying to uncover what is going on about this missing kid. And so she goes to their estate agent's office. She sits down with Rose, the mistress. She doesn't know she's a mistress. She just sits down and chats with her and is like, hey, my 5-year-old kid has this project where he has to write about the house that we live in. Could you possibly get me the information about this couple who came by and told us about living there? If he could chat with them and we could get their information so he could interview them, I really think it would help him do well on this project, which doesn't make any sense because he's 5. And like every single person that this story goes through acknowledges that it doesn't make sense. Like, she acknowledges it. Rose clearly acknowledges it. And then later, when Grant finds out about this, we'll get there. But he's like, that doesn't make any sense. What 5-year-old is writing a paper about a house that they live in? This story is just so stupid. And so you're sitting there being like, why is Rose going along with this? She like acts super weird about it. She's like, oh, I shouldn't really give you other people's information, but I guess if it'll help your son, I'll give you their new address. You're like, why did she do this? She's like, I'll give it to you later. I'll come by your house. And so Steph's like, thank you so much, goes home. And then later that night, she comes by with the information. And Grant comes home to Rose sitting across the table from Steph, his mistress and his wife, sitting across the table from each other. And he's just like, what's going on, guys? Like total deer in the headlights. And Steph is just like, oh, Rose came over to get that information that we needed for our son's homework assignment. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, just go see how our son's doing. Basically like, hint, hint, don't blow my cover. And he's just like, what is going on? So he goes in to check on his 5-year-old and he's like, what is this homework assignment? And the kid's like, huh? And he's like, huh? And they're both like, huh? It's just so weird. So then he goes back in and is like, hey, this is weird. But Rose is like, okay, I'm gonna go. And he's like, all right, I'll walk you to your car. And on the way to the car, predictably, he's like, what are you doing at my house? Don't ever come to my house again. What are you doing here? You're gonna ruin my life. I thought we agreed it was over. And she's like, we didn't agree it was over. You said not to contact you. But I don't think this homework assignment's a real thing, but like, I needed an excuse to come and see you because I miss you. And he's like, what? She was actually interested in me? I thought this was just a one-off thing. It's like, dude, yeah, when you start an affair, you've just opened the door to like chaos raining down on your marriage. Why are you surprised that she's still interested in you and like showed up at your house? I don't know, just like very weird thought process going on in his mind there, I feel. And like, at one point he like yells at her like, no, get out of here, we're done. And he's like, oh my gosh, like maybe... Is this another time? I think this is another time. I think she shows up a whole other time. I don't think he walks her to her car at all. She shows up another time and he meets her on the driveway before she goes inside and they have this conversation. And like he yells at her like, oh, we're done, all of that. And then his wife comes out and he's like, oh my gosh, did she hear that? And it turns out that she didn't hear. Her son heard them talking and told them that like, oh, dad's outside with that one lady again. And so she like goes out to meet them and Rose brushes it off being like, oh, I just came to bring you more information for your son's homework assignment. And Steph is like, okay, that's done. Why are you here? What? We don't need more. Okay. And then Rose is like, oh, my bad. I'm gonna go now. I don't know. It's just kind of this weird situation that like, I just didn't buy most of the things that happened in this book. But now Grant's freaking out that his son heard him talking to his mistress and he's like, so what did you hear me say? And his son's like, I don't know. I just heard you talking. Something could have been done there. I mean, something was done there. That like interaction between him and his son, like that felt real, it felt like someone who was cheating on their spouse would be super uncomfortable and trying to like figure out how much their kid heard. But like, if it's gonna happen in a mystery book, I wanted it to like lead somewhere. It's like, I guess this was meant to be a horror book, but I think it ended up just being a thriller or a mystery of sorts, because it wasn't the book that I thought it was, and so it wasn't a horror book. So I guess that kind of maybe colors my perception of the scenes that are included in this book. But even in mystery books, you know, you kind of expect most scenes to lead you to an outcome, and that one didn't really go anywhere. I feel like there could have been more happening there. But anyway, that's what's been going on with Grant. But during this same time, Steph is following up on the lead on that old couple, and she like goes to their house because now she has their address from Rose. She goes to their house and she's like trying to see if they still live there, because the only reason Rose, their estate agent, had their address was because her company had sold them their next house. And so Steph is like, I don't know if they still live here or not. This was the next place they live. And she goes there and she sees them like go in and out, and she's like, oh, okay, so they do still live here. Oh, you know what? I don't remember if this happened next, but she talks to her son and he mentions that old couple. Like, he's acting really scared in the middle of the night, and she's like, you don't need to be scared. Oh, I forgot all about this. She's been having nightmares about the kid that was killed there, because a kid was killed in her house and she's the mother of 2 children. I feel like that's a pretty normal thing to be freaked out about. And she's just been having these horrible nightmares, and her husband's really surprised that she's had nightmares, because she hasn't really had nightmares most of the time they've been together. And at one point when she wakes up screaming because of these nightmares, her son comes in and is like really worried about her and just kind of won't settle. What is it that's really stressful to you? Like, I know that you heard me scream, but I've showed you that I'm okay. And she's trying to figure out why he's so shaken up. And he's like, is that couple coming back? And she's like, what couple? And he's like, the old couple that came by that day that like dad didn't want them in the house. And she was like, oh, no, they're not coming by. And she's like, why is he still thinking about them? Like, I've been trying really hard to keep this whole mystery away from my kids. And he's like, well, they come by the nursery and peer through the windows sometimes. Which, all of a sudden, it's a horror book, because that is terrifying and doesn't go anywhere. We have no reason for why they haunt this house. Like, why? I mean, they don't haunt. They're not ghosts. That's not the spoiler. But why do they keep coming back? Like, clearly they're trying to see if people have discovered stuff, but I feel like the best way to avoid discovery is to not keep showing up on the property, you know? But that was horrifying. And I think as a result of this, if I remember correctly, she goes to the couple's house after this and confronts them. She like asks them a whole bunch of questions about their son and like the fact that he went missing. At this point, Steph has submitted pictures of the wall into the paper. And so people, like the community, knows that she's still, you know, on this, and her husband's really upset about it. And she goes to them and they're also upset about it, because they're like, why would you dredge up this family tragedy? But like, instead of asking them about the wall, she's like, tell me, I know you've told the police, but tell me about your experience on that date. Maybe then I'll be able to let it go. Which is weird, because I feel like, why wouldn't you just bring up the wall? And like the way that the community explains this is that like their kid had learning disabilities and was hard to handle, and so like, oh, it must have just been hard on them, which is like, wow, what a take, you know? What? I don't know. Just really weird. And after all of this, when she hears their story, she's like, huh, I guess it does just sound like he walked outside and ran off and you just couldn't keep up with him and you called the cops. Huh. But obviously she's not like persuaded, but she like leaves the house and is like sitting on this information. She's like, okay, maybe he did run away. No, he didn't run away. You know, like she's mulling this over to herself after this, despite not bringing up the wall to them, which again doesn't make much sense. So at this point, she is convinced that the child, William, is in her backyard, you know, buried, which is just horrendous. And if I thought that, then I would also want to dig up my backyard, which is exactly what she wants to do. And so she's like, you know, we can like restructure it in all of these ways. And it's definitely because I want to restructure it and not because I want to dig up and see if there's a body. But then, you know, she's like, who am I kidding? Of course, that's the main thing I want. And it's just so wild to me that Grant has been able to gaslight her into thinking she needs to like hide that motive from herself and then be like, oh, I guess it is just because of that. Oh, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. Like, I could not be gaslit out of that fear personally, but she has been. She feels like she needs to like pretend it's not a big deal, which just really sucks. So she's thinking about restructuring the yard, having someone come over, dig it all up and sort of start fresh with the backyard, right? And her husband comes home that day and she's talking to him about it. She's like, hey, I called a contractor and I got a bid for restructuring the backyard. Here's my vision. And before she can even start, he just lays into her. He's like, will you not stop? with talking about this kid. I know it's because you want to dig up the backyard and find this kid. He's not there. Why are you bringing this up? And like he's yelling loud enough, he wakes the kids who are sleeping upstairs. So she goes up and consoles the children. And this is not the first time this has happened, where like he's disrupted the kids and she's had to calm them down. So she goes up, calms them down, comes downstairs, and like when she gets down there, he's putting on his coat. And she's like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm just going out. I'm too angry. And so he just like waltzes outside, and she's like, seriously? Like, this isn't even how he handles this sort of like situation. What is going on? So I, as a reader, am like, okay, clearly he's like, that's it. This is too stressful. My wife is stupid or something. I'm gonna go talk to my mistress. That's what I assume. I assume that's why he leaves, but it isn't, which is weird because Steph goes out of her way to say he doesn't usually walk out on arguments. He'll like fume quietly instead. And so he does this thing that's out of character, and it doesn't lead to really much of anything. What he does do is he goes to the local pub, and he's like 3 drinks in, and this guy's like, hey, where are you new in town? And he's like, yep. And the guy's like, where do you live? Oh my gosh, you live in that house? And he's like, oh my gosh, it's an older guy. He's like, back in the 60s, I helped look for that kid. Like every day after high school, I would join the search parties looking for that kid. But me, I've always thought it was the couple that did it. You know, their son gave them a lot of trouble, but that's no excuse. I think that they killed him, but there was never any proof. During this conversation, like at first, Grant's kind of like rolling his eyes. But then even worse than that, as he's listening to this old man talk about it, he's like, could that be? Is my wife not just like off her rocker and rambling about something that like couldn't possibly be real? Could this be a thing that happened? Like, it's so weird. Why does it take this random stranger in a pub, this random old man, just talking about it for a brief moment, and he's suddenly like, could that be a thing? When his wife shows him like a wall covered in scratches and signed by the child. This is insane to me. It is insane behavior, insane writing. So hard to read. Anyway, after this, he just like goes home. He doesn't go to his mistress that whole night. So I don't know why like it had to be out of character for him to leave in the middle of that. It was just kind of a weird writing choice. It's important to note that through all of this, Grant has been working from home some of the time. It's not relevant until right now, which is why I didn't think about it. There's been this side plot about maybe him losing his job, but that doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know why that was in there. But the next day, Steph just goes off on her merry way. I think she's taking the kids to school, and then, well, like the older kid to school, and then running errands with the younger baby, I think. While Grant is home alone, who would show up at the front door? Well, that's a great question, because I guess there's 2 different people that it could be. But it's not the old couple, it's Rose, his mistress. Grant's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I just need to be with you one more time for old time's sake. I promise you, after this time, I will leave you alone. But if you don't let me in, I'll tell your wife all about us. Which, yeah, diabolical in that, like, why is she so into this guy that the author has just given us no reason to care about? But whatever. So this is the choice that she makes. And he's like, well, I'm not losing my wife and kids now. So he lets her inside. Now we cut over to Steph, and Steph has decided that she has just about had it with all of this. She's convinced that this kid died in their house, and she needs to get to the bottom of it. And her husband is not going to approve them having a construction crew dig up the backyard. So she calls the cops. She goes, I really think that you will find evidence of this crime in my backyard. I think if you dig up my backyard, you will find the answers that you've been looking for. And I, as a homeowner, give you permission to come over and dig up my backyard. So she's like, all right, hopefully they come because of this. And then she decides to head home early. And when she gets home, Grant has just come out of the shower, and she's like, why did you shower in the middle of the day? And he's like, oh, just needed to rejuvenate. And you as the reader are like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Is Rose still in the house? Did he just shower before or after doing the deed? What is going on? Then you flip to his head, you flip to Grant's perspective. What he's thinking at that time is, I got away with it again. And so you're like, oh, okay, I guess Rose isn't in the house. And then the police show up and start digging in the backyard. And Steph is like, oh, thank goodness they took me seriously. And then they find a body. I'll give you 10 guesses. Well, I guess you'd get it in 10, but it's not William's body. It's Rose's. What? This is literally like the last chapter. The second to last chapter ends, and then the last chapter starts. And she's like, thank goodness I'll never see that scumbag again because he's in prison. And you're like, what is happening? And you find out, I don't know why it jumped through all of this, but you find out that he decided that since Rose was threatening his marriage, she was a threat to his life that was never going to go away. And so instead of letting her in one more time for old time's sake, he kills her. And after doing so, which he does remarkably fast, one might note, because Steph came home early that day, he buries her in the backyard, despite the fact that he knows that his wife is currently obsessing, rightfully I say, over the fact that she thinks there's a body in their backyard and is obsessed with the idea of digging up the backyard to find the body. And so he buries a body in the backyard to save his marriage. There's no amount of reasoning that you could give me that would make me believe that this man thought that was a good idea, thought that he would get away with it if he did that. It's a bad thing to kill someone at all. So I'm not discussing the rightfulness of killing someone. I'm discussing how on earth did he think he would get away with it if he buried her in the backyard that his wife is currently obsessing over digging up. The last thoughts in his perspective when the police are digging up the backyard is like, no, Steph, what have you done? It's like, why are you surprised? This is the daftest man I have ever run into in a book. He cannot put two and two together about the mystery that happened in this house, and then decides to put a body in the place that his wife is convinced there's a body, and will stop at nothing until she discovers what is happening. So he goes to jail, and she's like, well, I'll never see him again. Good thing my mom's here to help me with the kids. And the book ends there. There is an epilogue, which I actually forgot about. The whole reason I'm explaining this book to you is because I was explaining it to my friend Emma on Read the World. You should check out her channel. But I was explaining to her how stupid this book was, and she was like, you should explain that to your viewers. And so here I am. But I forgot that this epilogue even happened. But she was like, what happened to William? And that's a great question, because this whole book is building up to a certain crime, and at the end, a different crime happens, which isn't really... It sounds on paper like how you're supposed to subvert expectations in a mystery, but they didn't. It just leaves you unsatisfied and like, huh? And confused. But there is an epilogue, okay? And in the epilogue, a new family has purchased this house. And they're like, it's gonna be great for our little kid. We're so excited. And nothing could ever go wrong.
And nothing can go wrong. Oh no, it all went wrong.
They're moving in. The way that this part is written mirrors the beginning of the book really well, where it explains that the wife is taking care of the child while the husband is moving boxes and his back feels sore and he's complaining about it. It's a really good mirroring. Honestly, probably the best writing in this entire book is the fact that the first chapter and the epilogue mirror each other really well in kind of an eerie way. That's where the good writing ends in this book though. But anyway, his kid runs into the house and is playing with a paper airplane, and they're throwing it back and forth, and then it slips between the floorboards, and he goes over to grab it, and then doesn't grab it for some reason. He gets distracted and goes outside. We're reading this from a narrator's perspective instead of in anyone's head this time, and it's so he didn't go and get the piece of paper from between the floorboards, but if he had gotten the piece of paper from between the floorboards, he would have discovered that it settled next to something that used to look very different, but is now all white and dusty. And you're like, wait, did we follow an entire mystery about this missing kid throughout the entire book of what happened to him? Ooh, are they gonna find him? Is he in the backyard? Only for the epilogue to be oh yeah, I forgot that there was a main mystery happening in this story. Yeah, he's just in the floorboards of the playroom. What? That's how you settle that big mystery? I guess good for them not making it obvious, since Steph was convinced it was in the backyard, not actually putting the body in the backyard. But what? I just came out of that and was like, okay. I just felt like I'd wasted so much of my life. I didn't waste that much of my life. I read this all in one day. But I just, wow, that's where all that was leading to. All right. I was just left with such a feeling of, okay. So that is We Used to Live Here by Daniel Hurst, not We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleweir. Let me know if you want a review of the correct We Used to Live Here book, because I will be reading that. I put a hold in for it the second I realized I had the wrong book, and that hold came in yesterday. So I will start reading it soon. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I had a weird time reading this book, and so regurgitating it at you has been very fun. I hope you had as much fun listening to it as I had making fun of it. If you liked this video, please give it a like. It really helps boost me in the algorithm, and definitely subscribe to see more of my stuff. I just uploaded a video where I talk about AI in the bookish world and how it's affecting the novel writing and publishing industry. I also recently moved into this new apartment, so I have a video explaining the moving process of all of my books and just kind of vlogging my putting my bookshelves back together, so go check out that video. And if you're into fantasy, I read Wheel of Time and review the books as I go, so definitely check out that playlist as well. Feel free to follow my Goodreads, Storygraph, Instagram, etc., all of which are Emily at Midnight and are linked in the description below. I read this book digitally, so I don't have anything to hold up here, but you should still have a wonderful day, treat people with respect, and pick up a book.